Well, it appears like the legacy media in Canada is back at it again, trying to manipulate Canadians into embracing far left policy through extremely dishonest coverage. You're probably already very well aware of the crazy censorship bill that NDP MP Leah Gazin has put forward. I believe it's Bill C 413 that would criminalize residential school denialism as if anything like that ever existed. You'll every once in a while bump into a truly crazy person who thinks that residential schools were not cruel and inhumane and that they were only fantastic. But that's not a common type of person in this country, nor does anyone respect people with those type of opinions. Leah Gazin is trying to criminalize such things as saying there are not bodies under the Kamloops Residential School of Indigenous children. And isn't that a good thing that Canadian history is not nearly as cruel as those on the far left would like to portray it as? There was obviously a lot of dark chapters, a lot of bad things were done, but we shouldn't be exaggerating things and then criminalizing people who disagree with the exaggerations. But this isn't really about Leah Gazin, although I want to start out with a post on her own uh, like X account that really proves what kind of mindset she is in as a person. One, you do get the pronouns in her name, and she doesn't even have her real name in as her name on X. But this was after Donald Trump was made the president elect of the US again. She put out this graphic statement saying, "It's a dark day for human rights in the US and globally for women, 2S LGBTQAI plus indigenous people, workers, the poor, migrants, and immigrants, people marginalized by systems and the climate. Grieve but don't despair. Connect and mobilize together. We push back against hate and extremism." Yeah, she's a little bit crazy. She is a little bit radical. I don't think she left out a single group of people in that post other than maybe white men that she thinks that Donald Trump is like against, even though Donald Trump won a record amount of minority voters for a Republican presidential candidate. It's been since like Eisenhower that the Republicans have had this many black voters. It's crazy. Anyways, but this is a poll that came out from Research Co. the other day, just a couple of days ago, that I think highlights just how bad the polling industry is at asking questions. And I think in this case, it was intentionally done so. The legacy media is using this terrible Research Co. poll question in order to advocate that actually Canadians are cool with censorship. They are not. Canadians do not like censorship. Just because you ask them a scuffed question does not mean suddenly people actually want their neighbors arrested because they have pretty mainstream opinions on things like residential schools. The funny thing, too, is that Bill C 413 is coming from Leah Gazin, who is openly just basically pro Hamas. She is somebody who doesn't care about churches being burned down all across Canada. In fact, when Conservative MP Garnet Genuine had confronted her on this matter, that she seems to not care at all, and basically dismissed the issue of churches being burned down everywhere because she didn't know the race of the people doing it or who was doing it or what their motives were, as if there were good motives to burning down churches, especially churches on Indigenous land. Somehow it would be cool in her mind, which she's implying, for an Indigenous person to burn down another Indigenous person's church because most of these were churches mostly attended by Indigenous people. But here's the question that came out from Research Co. that I think is extremely dishonest. Maybe they did this in good faith. I kind of doubt it because this entire poll question is meant to make you say yes. I'll read it here for you. Here is the question. Quote, would you want your MP to would you want your MP to favor or oppose a bill in the House that would make it a criminal offense to willfully promote hatred against Indigenous people by condoning, denying, justifying, or minimizing the facts about residential schools? It says in favor 50%, opposed 24%, unsure 17. This is a dishonest question. And a lot of people detected that it was a dishonest question because in polling Canada, they're not doing anything wrong. They just post poll results. A lot of people agreed with me because when I just simply left a reply saying this is such a poorly worded question, I got 395 people liking that reply, and only 267 people liked the original post. Again, the original post is not in favor or against this poll question, they're simply posting it. But the fact that so many people traveled down into the replies to see if anyone else was seeing how poor this question was really says something. This question implies that basically if you don't oppose it or if you don't aren't in favor of this, then you must condone hatred. And this is not saying it should be a criminal offense to like do something nasty to an indigenous person to attack them. Obviously, those are already offenses. It's saying to condone or minimize or deny or to minimize facts about residential schools is a crazy thing to criminalize. You shouldn't be criminalizing speech in general. You should be able to say whatever nasty thing you want as long as you're not directly inciting violence. But to minimize would mean effectively to just disagree with somebody who convinces themselves that they are an expert on residential school history. And when I say convinces themselves, because there's so many experts who are mad that anyone points out that, yeah, there's probably not a lot of bodies underneath the Kamloops school of indigenous kids covertly, I guess, killed and then buried. That just didn't happen. I'm sorry it didn't happen. I don't know why these people want it to have happened, but it didn't happen, and they want to criminalize that. But here's the media coverage that the CTV News is putting out. It's stupid. It's just dumb. This is just ridiculous coverage. It says most Canadians support criminalizing residential school denialism, poll finds. And Andrew Weichel here just basically says that, well, look, the Research Co poll conducted last month after NDP MP Leah Gazin introduced a private member's bill seeking to criminalize public denial of Canada's residential school system would forcibly separate Indigenous children from their families and culture, leading to widely documented physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. Asked how they would like their MP to vote on bill, 57% of surveyed respondents said they would definitely or probably want their local representative to back their proposal. It's because they don't know what the actual bill is proposing. It's because the question is worded in such a way that you're a bad person if you oppose it. You're not. In fact, you would be opposing censorship. If someone actually has a nasty, horrible opinion, disagree with that person. Shame that person. If someone denies the Holocaust, shame that person. That's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's counterfactual. If someone says that residential schools didn't happen or it was happy fun times and it wasn't a cruel system that was unjust, shame them because that's obviously not true. But this would criminalize literally stories on the record in Parliament where Indigenous people said, yeah, the residential school I went to was actually not that bad and was fine. Because obviously there's going to be stories like that. But that's stuff that would actually criminalize. An Indigenous person who had obviously a not normal experience at a residential school and thought it was fine or it was a good time or whatever, that would be criminalized because it doesn't go along with the predominant narrative. And guess what? History is very complicated. There are going to be eras that horrible things happen and that some people, for some reason, had a good experience out of. Maybe it was because they went to a residential school run not by psychopaths, or maybe it was just because of just some strange time in their lives, and for some reason this was better than whatever they had at home. But the idea that we now are going to criminalize people just having a nuanced take on history is ridiculous. Again, Leah Gazin would be the type of person who would want to whitewash what Hamas did on October 7th in Israel by murdering Jewish people and foreign workers in the Israeli territories. She's that type of person who now wants to criminalize what you say about residential schools when nobody in Canada, to any significant degree, is arguing that residential schools are good. But she's a good person because she's proposing this. But it also lets her get across the finish line if this thing gets approved of. It allows her to normalize censoring opinions she doesn't like because this is what it's all about. And that is what the media is doing. This article knows this guy is not dumb. I don't think Andrew Weichel here is dumb. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows how scuffed the question is, and he didn't ask any questions. And this has been the media all over the place on this issue. Here is another headline from someone else. Residential survivors call on Canada to criminalize residential school denialism. Who cares? This is propaganda. Does their opinion mean that censorship is good now? No, it does not. There's no pushback. And there's no pushback in this entire article that this is a civil liberties violation, but this person is a survivor, so you must You must agree with them. This is exactly the kind of Me Too stuff that we had happen in like 2019 and 2020, where suddenly every survivor now must be believed in terms of not just their story, but their opinions. I probably believe their stories that they had awful times at residential schools because the system was generally pretty cruel. But the idea I now have to agree with all their prescriptions is patently absurd. In fact, the way that the media even frames this is frankly racist. The idea that I'm now supposed to agree with someone because they're indigenous. That is the battle that Leah Gazin has basically tried to pitch. That this is indigenous people versus racist white people because they don't agree fully with them, even though indigenous people themselves, most of them, do not agree with these people pushing censorship bills. But this is the media game that they're trying to play right now. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. If you want to keep watching my videos, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, like this video, leave a comment, and if you want to support it, you can always donate to the Give Send Go legal fundraiser in the description below, as well as you can sign up on my website, wyattclaypool.com, if you want local, federal, provincial leadership and nomination recommendations. It allows me to reach out to people in very specific areas of the country to let you know who I would basically want to vote for, especially if you're in Manitoba or New Brunswick. Sign up because there are going to be progressive conservative leadership races in your provinces in the coming future. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Have a good one.